trying to get pregnant for years and then they switch to ketosis with a ketogenic diet and they become pregnant. Why would nature make it so that when you consume high-fat diet, ketogenic diet, why would it make it so you're more fertile and get you pregnant if it was damaging to the baby? I don't think it would make a lot of sense. What is going on, everyone? Happy Q4 of 2019, almost into 2020. It's exciting, right? So I was working with my coach in my business, and one of the things she was telling me, what is the deal with the carnivore diet? She calls it the caveman diet, which is kind of funny. I think it's kind of cute. But she asked, women want to know about hormones. How does this affect your hormones? Would it be safe if you were pregnant or if you're trying to get pregnant? And I thought I would do a video to explain that, because when I went there searching for the information, personally, I couldn't find a whole lot. So let's just jump into it. So a quick warning, I'm not a doctor. I do not replace or I should not override the advice of your family physician. I would argue that I may be more researched in certain areas, but at the same time, I'm not qualified in the same respects as they are. So please, please, please don't follow this advice for anything beyond entertainment purposes and your own self-exploration. I'm gonna put a bunch of anecdotal feedback at the end of the video that you can take a look at from cases of women who have personally done this and tried this. But be careful. Use your judgment, listen to your body, and do only what you feel is right and what your doctor has approved that you can do. This video is just for entertainment. And another disclaimer, I know it kind of stinks. When I was looking on the internet, especially if I was having a child, which I'm currently not having a child, but if I was, I would want assurances. I would want someone who can say, hey, this is the best way to raise your baby, this is the best diet to feed on, and this is gonna be the most nutritious. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything that was conclusive out there. So we're gonna go through about 3 or 4 points here in this video. I spent quite a bit of time researching the topic. I wanted to learn more about it. And what I will tell you in this second disclaimer is that I personally would absolutely endorse a ketogenic carnivore diet for my wife if she was having a baby. I'm not married, I'm single. But if I was gonna have a baby, I would absolutely support this diet. And we're gonna go through these points, and hopefully this will add some clarity along with the stories that you read. And doing your own research and talking to your own doctor, you can decide if this is right for you. Disclaimer number 3, and I hate to tell you all this stuff, but if you've never done the ketogenic diet or you've never done the carnivore diet, getting pregnant or having a pregnancy is not the time to try something new like that. Stick to what you know, stick to what works well for you without changing a lot of things. This is not an ideal time. If you're not pregnant yet, or you're maybe planning on the future, then you can try these things. And I've got a whole slew of videos that you can go to my channel and learn all about the carnivore diet, how to track macros, how to properly do it from a nose to tail perspective, really just how to dial it in. So again, if it's something you've never done and you're pregnant or you're about to be pregnant, I highly recommend you don't do it. Let's move right along. So as I scoured the internet looking for research and information about pregnancy and ketosis and carnivore diet, first of all, there wasn't really anything on the carnivore diet. It's such a new thing that's been more recently documented that there just wasn't really any publications, any studies, certainly no sort of studies on PubMed.gov that show a carnivore diet. I don't think they've even done clinical trials with the carnivore diet yet. What I looked at though was there was a study out there about mice, and this is, I think, the one that's scaring most people. So they did a study, and it was back a few years ago, and what they found was that they fed mice a synthetic ketogenic diet. So it was Crisco, canola oil. It was not a animal-based carnivore keto diet. It was not a whole foods, natural, healthy, sort of the way we think of healthy in today's terms, which is food in its natural bioavailable form, largely animal foods, especially if you're a carnivore like I am. They were feeding mice this synthetic ketogenic diet. What they found was that some of the organs over the course of the diet that they fed them on, and they tested their ketone levels to kind of ensure and compare between a regular sort of standard diet set of mice as well as the ketogenic set of mice on the synthetic diet, that their organs were slightly altered. There was no sort of conclusion. I believe the heart and the brain were larger than the actual other case of mice that was just on the standard diet, but then like the liver and the kidneys were smaller. And so the conclusion of the study was that they found that this was concerning. It might be concerning. Anytime you have a different development of an animal from what you normally would have, and you can see it in a pattern, and it's based on dietary changes that can kind of lead to some conclusions, but it wasn't like they died or like they had disease. It was basically that they had these different size organs, and there may be deductions that those could be problematic. Again, two big pieces here. One, they concluded that the organs grew differently and that they could be problematic. It wasn't like they were totally abnormal or crazy. And two, they were on a synthetic diet, which is probably the bigger point. They were on a synthetic diet that wasn't like natural whole foods. Of course, you're not gonna feel good. And I would imagine for a baby developing, it's probably not a good idea to put them on that kind of a diet. Skipping ahead, this scares a lot of people out of thinking that ketosis can be a healthy state to be in if you're in a pregnant state or trying to get pregnant. And naturally, there's some reasons why that makes sense. The other point that I think a lot of physicians are concerned about is this idea that they're mixing up being in ketosis versus being in a ketoacidosis state. And they're two very different things. If you're in ketoacidosis, this is a state where you develop very high levels of ketones in your body. Diabetics can get it. Diabetic ketoacidosis is actually the main situation that you get into. And if women were pregnant in that state, that would not be a good thing. But to be in a dietary ketogenic state where you're actually fueling your body with healthy fats, you're eating a sufficient amount of calories to provide energy versus being in ketoacidosis where you might even be starving yourselves, those are very different states. And I think for a lot of family physicians, they might be thinking that you are in the starved state, or they're looking at historical sort of studies or information or stories supporting really the most common existing conditions when people are in ketosis, which is when they're actually starving themselves. That's not good for a baby. That's not good for a developing fetus. You want to make sure you have a supply of ample amounts of nutrients and food and calories when you're going through gestation. So when you're taking into account a whole foods ketogenic carnivore diet that's rich in vitamins, low in plant molecules that can be toxic, you combine that, it can be very beneficial to yourself as well as your baby. The other thing I found fascinating while researching this topic was there was a substantial amount of information out there that being in ketosis improves fertility. And I thought that was really fascinating because why on earth would nature make you more fertile? These are cases where women have gone from a standard American diet or a carbohydrate diet to a ketogenic diet, and they've been trying to get pregnant for years, and then they switch to ketosis with a ketogenic diet and they become pregnant. Why would nature make it so that when you consume high-fat diet, ketogenic diet, why would it make it so you're more fertile and get you pregnant if it was damaging to the baby? I don't think it would make a lot of sense. Yeah. So from that perspective and from a fertility perspective, the fact that we know that ketogenic diets can support being more higher in fertility, which if I dig into it probably makes sense because you're producing a lot of the hormones from cholesterol, from dietary fat that you're getting and taking into your body, it would be beneficial to be in ketosis with respect to fertility. Another interesting thing is PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, can be treated as well with a ketogenic diet, and women have found a lot of success with that as well. And again, we can kind of reparrot the idea here. A carnivore diet is high in healthy fats. It's high in saturated fat. These are building blocks for hormones for a majority of your body. And when you think about a baby, and you think about the baby in development, one of the largest pieces of the baby is their head. Their body is so much smaller than their head, but their brain and their head are developing and getting to a much larger size as they develop. And the brain is made up of roughly 2/3 fat. So consuming a high-fat diet kind of makes sense when you think about this. Not to mention the key essential nutrients we talk about, which aren't in a plant-based diet. Again, I don't think plants are necessarily horrible, but when we're talking about is a ketogenic diet safe and do babies need carbs, I think we can safely say that a ketogenic diet could be absolutely safe for your baby. Again, check with your doctor. This is just for entertainment purposes, but I'm going to show you anecdotes and stories as well at the end of the video here of women who have had a lot of success with a ketogenic diet, who've gone through that experience. So I'm kind of parlaying into this idea of the ancestral, as Dr. Ken Berry would say, the ancestral appropriateness of this diet, and I would call it the ancestral alignment, is the idea that we have this way of eating which makes us more fertile. It helps with infertility. It seems to make us more metabolically healthy, lowering blood sugar levels, lowering inflammation in our body, providing us with fatty acids that support our brain and our hormones in our health. Why wouldn't it make sense from an ancestral perspective that women wouldn't be eating fatty animals, organ meats with nutrient-rich vitamins, and the baby's brain being developed from all these nutrients that are key building blocks for the brain material itself? Again, brains are largely made up of cholesterol and fat and protein. But fat and cholesterol make up the majority of your brain. And cholesterol is in every cell in your body. So from that perspective, looking at all these things, one kind of a synthetic keto study, which didn't really conclude much other than that the organs did differ in some volume sizes, looking at the idea of dietary ketosis versus ketoacidosis, where we're actually eating the amount of calories and getting good fat sources for our body and for the baby and the development of the fetus. Fertility being a big factor, us becoming more fertile biologically, which to me tells us that nature is saying, hey, this type of diet is making you more fertile. Wouldn't this be a good diet to stay on to feed your baby while it's developing and while you're breastfeeding it and while it's evolving into the young animal it's gonna become? And finally, the ancestral alignment, which again, kind of circled back to repeating that same point, which is from that fertility perspective, from the biological perspective, and from the fact that we know so many case studies where the biology in the humans is improving, the blood sugar is going down, inflammation is going down, hormones are going up, like positive hormones are going up, markers are improving, and vitamins are basically more bioavailable with less anti-nutrients. It just seems to me like this diet could be very effective for having a child and for giving it the best possible nutrients it possibly can have. So if you made it this far, as I mentioned, I was gonna share some of those anecdotes. I'll put those in the video here. Let's just jump right into it. I hope those were helpful. They obviously don't represent a full, consistent, conclusive study, but I think if you do some digging and you do some research on your own, you're gonna find that being in ketosis and being in a carnivore diet will be extremely beneficial to your child and to your experience in pregnancy. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe, comment. Let me know if you've if you've had a pregnancy or had a child and you've gone through a ketogenic diet with that experience. I would love to hear that feedback. And as always, thanks a lot for tuning in. Until next time, stay healthy.